And we are back. John Adams here with our very special guest, Tyler Jones of Carmichael Consulting. And we're talking about internet speeds. Last week, Tyler, thank you for explaining a little bit about the importance of not only our upload, but our download speed, both of those. But this week, what is the solution? If you're in a situation, I saw an ad the other day that said 5G is coming, don't buy anything. If you have miserable or mediocre internet speed and you want better, but you don't want to have to pay $500 a month, what is the solution?
So there are some new technologies coming along, and particularly for folks who are outside of urban areas, it's a significant challenge for a lot of Americans. And so there's a couple of evolving technologies that are going to have a big impact on this in the next few years. The first is cellular 5G. As that gets further and further rolled out across the country, that can have really high speeds, north of a gigabyte. So it can be incredibly fast. Now, there are obviously, as with any other technology, a lot of caveats to that. Depending on which carrier you're talking about, you may have to be pretty close to the tower. There's a couple that it helps if you have a tinfoil hat on and are licking the tower. But it is going to be better than what we have now, and that'll continue to get better as it evolves. The other big one, which is really interesting, is the low Earth satellites that Elon Musk is behind. I think Skylink is the service, and it is a net of these low orbit satellites. But if you're in an area that otherwise doesn't have good internet access or may not have internet access at all, it's going to eventually be to the point where you can get around 100 megabit up and down and at a fairly reasonable price point. Now, satellite-based internet's been around for a while. The problem was it was prohibitively expensive and usually had really weird restrictions. They would only let you use like 100 megs per month, and it had to be between 9 p.m. and 2 a.m. or, really weird stuff like that. So we did have a couple of customers who had to use that because that was literally their only choice. But these new technologies, 5G and satellite internet, that reduce the problems that you've historically had with those technologies are going to be game changers for a lot of people.
All right. I looked in the Atlanta area recently, and you can get 5G, but you have to go downtown and stand within 2 feet of a Georgia Tech campus or something. It's not real well spread out yet.
Right.
Is that going to change?
It is, and it's certainly coming. You see the ads on TV. Those providers know that that's a sales point for them. So people will buy new phones when that new technology is available to them. So they're going to push, and there's certainly the companies are all making the investments to get that rolled out, and you're going to see it get more broadly distributed all the time, and that will continue to improve as that technology gets physically rolled out.
All right. Well, we're counting on something, and I think 5G may be the answer, but I'm tickled pink with my megabit service in Decatur, but here on St. Simon's, we're just not getting it yet. So we'll see. Right. Maybe, what was it? Didn't Google have some sort of balloon technology where they were trying to cover the world? Whatever happened to that?
Yeah, it ran out of helium. Now, there are a lot of people trying really creative ways because, let's face it, the internet is so integral to all of our lives these days. When we're separated from that, that is a significant challenge for a lot of people. And so there is a lot of creative thinking going into how do we make sure we get the fastest connections possible to as many people as possible. And that's, where billion-dollar ideas come from.
Well, speaking of billion-dollar ideas, I have one. I want you to write a book called The Simple and Easy Way to Compare Internet Speeds.
Maybe a multi-volume set, but
I know I need the simple and easy, just a checklist or something. Tyler Jones, Carmichael Consulting. Your firm helps small to medium-sized businesses as well as other like enterprise type situations. Tell me a little about your company, how it got started, and who you think you could be most helpful to.
So I spent about 15 years in corporate IT, and about 10 years ago, actually it'll be 11 years next month, I left to start Carmichael. I'd worked in a lot of very high security businesses, so banking, payroll, things like that. And I knew that security was going to be a bigger and bigger concern to small and medium-sized businesses. So I wanted to take what I learned in big organizations, try and figure good ways to scale that down, make it affordable and usable for small and medium-sized businesses. And it turned out I'm not right a lot of the time. I was right on that one. And security obviously is the driving factor for a lot of people when it comes to technology these days. So we work with businesses from 10 to several hundred people, and we really do try and do all of the IT that any organization needs. So we really want to be kind of a one-stop solution for everything from networking to computers to servers to cloud services and everything in between. And so we really want to be a business's one-stop shop where they can make sure that all of their IT needs are covered and they can focus on running their business.
Well, you are my computer guru, whether you like it or not. There are people that depend on you here at Real Estate Coffee Break, and we appreciate your taking time to visit with us. If folks wanted to get hold of you and learn a little more about your company, or maybe just had a quick question, how can they reach you guys?
Absolutely. They can find us on the internet at carmichaelconsulting.net. We have a freshly revamped website they can go visit. Works great on mobile phones as well as on computers. And they can call our office anytime at 678-719-9671.
Fantastic. Tyler Jones, Carmichael Consulting Solutions, and carmichaelconsulting.net. Thank you, my friend. We'll talk to you again real soon.
Take care.
Bye now. All right, good. You got time for one more? Yeah. Are you tight?
I'm good.
Okay, great. Stop me, because I'll use you up.
No, I think another 10 minutes or so would be perfect. So
good. All right. Let's go ahead and talk about password security, because I know we've covered it before, but I am increasingly dependent on LastPass.
Yeah.
Just because it creates these things for me.
Absolutely.
So anyway, let's talk about it. Of course, my my brilliant password for Microsoft, 1954. What a great password, you know? Okay, I'm not telling anybody else that. Okay, here we go. 3, 2, 1. Once again, our very special guest, Tyler Jones, here with our Technology Corner on the Real Estate Coffee Break. Hello, Tyler. How are you, sir?
Hey, John. Great. Good to see you again.
Listen, you and I go way back. I mean, the first time I started listening to you on what I call the ex-wife, WGST, was I had a K-Pro CPM machine with dual floppies and a monster 9-inch screen.
Yep.
and you had to load CPM, and there was no hard drive. I mean, those were like the early days, and boy, have we come a long way. But a lot of people, Tyler, still have passwords left over from 30, 40, 50 years ago, and they're using words like password as their password. This is not a good situation.
No.
Give us some ideas on password security, why it's important, what we can do, and what we should be thinking about as we're setting these passwords up.
Absolutely. And you're right. It is the most critical thing protecting most systems. And passwords are still, unfortunately, very easy to guess for a lot of users. You know, when you see the annual reports from the FBI and other security organizations, password and password 123 are still pretty commonly used out there. And you'll always see the trends of like whatever the big movie was of this year, it'll be a character from that movie as a common password, things like that.
Right.
So there's kind of two schools of thought on that. It used to be that we wanted everybody to change their password regularly, you know, every 30 to 45 days, and it needed to be a certain amount of complexity. More and more, we're thinking that it's actually a better idea to not have to change your password as frequently if that lets you make it more complex. And one of the challenges is that it's hard to remember a lot of passwords. And let's face it, all of us have a bunch of passwords. You're going to have one for your bank. You're going to have one for wherever you're paying your mortgage. You're going to have one for, you know, your car loan. You're going to have passwords for all these different systems that you have to constantly change. So The big thing these days is use a good password manager, whether it's LastPass or 1Password, or there's plenty of other Dashlane. There's plenty of other ones out there. That helps significantly. And one of the worst practices around passwords, other than those that are too simple, is that people reuse them.
Yeah.
And you see that all the time. So anytime there's a big data breach, the first thing the bad guys do, they're going to get into a lower security site. So let's say they break into your, neighborhood tennis team's website and they steal your login. The first thing they're going to do is take that email address and that password and go try it at Bank of America. Then they're going to try Wells Fargo. They're going to see if they get lucky and get into a site where they can do some real financial damage because you reused your password.
Are they interested? Are they, Tyler? Are they interested in cracking small businesses? I mean, I'm not a Colonial Pipeline or the FBI. Are they after me?
They absolutely are. And one of the reasons is that as those larger organizations who have millions of dollars to spend on IT and security every year do that, they get harder to get into. The bad guys are then going to look for who's the next easiest target. So they do look at consumers, they do look at small businesses. And we've seen some folks that came to us after it happened get significant damages because of bad software that gets on there and encrypts all their files, things like that. And it's really an ugly situation when that happens. I mean, you can have a business end because of that kind of stuff. So use a good password manager, letting it make unique passwords for every site you use are really good ideas. The other big one, and you and I have talked about this before, is using multi-factor authentication or two-factor authentication.
I have a beef that I would like to complain to you about. I was trying to get on some site the other day and I was in a hurry, as I always am. And I had the password right, but it stopped me and said, which of these pictures do not contain a motorcycle? Yeah. And every one of them had wheels that looked like motorcycles. And I got it wrong every time. I finally said, hell, I don't need to go to this damn site. And I went somewhere else and bought what I was trying to buy. What is it with those pictures? Whose idea was that?
So that's called a CAPTCHA, and it can be frustrating. Sometimes they'll do, it'll be tell us what these letters are, and they are impossible to read.
Right.
Basically, what they're trying to do there is to stop automated systems or automated bots, basically, from getting into that site.
It stopped me.
You may be a robot, John. You may need to check. You may be the original Terminator. You might be Schwarzenegger's predecessor.
Whatever it is, I'm not smart enough to do the damn CAPTCHA, and I just change companies. I understand that. Talk to us for a second about multi-factor authentication, because I think it's an important topic and why it's important.
It is. And in business and in your personal affairs, it's really good to use the technology. The simplest way to describe it is, as we've been talking about, passwords are vulnerable. People reuse them. They're overly simple. You might leave it on a sticky note on your computer monitor. There are lots of reasons that passwords on their own, you don't turn the camera around. There are lots of reasons that passwords alone aren't great security. So what multi-factor or two-factor authentication does is it adds another component to the security. And it can be everything from a biometric, the phone recognizing your face or a fingerprint on your keyboard, or it can be a code that gets sent to an application on your phone. So you put in your password, it then prompts you for that code, which is sent to your phone so that you can get into a site that needs that higher security. It's a great idea. It can be a little inconvenient. It's a few extra keystrokes when you log in, but that can stop up to about 99% of breaches that happen from a login. That's a Microsoft statistic. Yeah, Microsoft has been big on pushing that. So if you're using any of the Microsoft services, particularly Office 365, they say that two-factor authentication can stop more than 99% of the breaches they see happen, because people, and most commonly they get phished. They get what looks like a legitimate email, and it says, hey, click on this link and then put in your Office credentials and you'll get this important file to review or whatever. There's always this what's called artificial sense of urgency. It's kind of a, you need to click this link or you're going to lose these emails, or this deal's going to go away, or whatever that is. And then the bad guys are going to steal that information and go log into your account. And that's when the real trouble starts. So that two-factor authentication means even if you got the person's password, there's very little chance you're going to be able to get into the account, because it's going to send that code to their phone. The bad guys can get that, but it's incredibly hard and they don't care. It is a kind of lowest common denominator. Like we were talking about earlier, moving on from big businesses to small, they don't care if you're harder to break into than your neighbor, they're going to go break into your neighbor.
Wow. Well, I hope my neighbor is harder to break into, but I've learned some things today. So what I'm hearing you say is if I can't handle show me the motorcycle in these pictures, just click next and hope that the next one I can figure out.
That's right.
Tyler Jones, Carmichael Consulting Solutions. How can people get in touch with you? And I know you guys do a lot of work for small to medium-sized businesses. Tell us just a little bit about your company, and if people wanted to reach you, how would they do that?
Sure. Folks can find us online at carmichaelconsulting.net or call our office at 678-719-9671. We do work with small and medium-sized businesses of 10 users up to several hundred. We work with publicly traded companies, multinationals, all the way down to small businesses locally in the Atlanta area that just need good security and good IT support. And we're the one-stop shop for that. So everything from your internet connection to your network, to your mobile devices, to your computers, to your cloud services and servers, we handle all of that and make it easy for the business to not worry about IT and focus on growing their business.
Well, I'm glad you're worried about it because it gives me a headache. Tyler Jones, if people want to reach you, what's a good number?
678-719-9671.
Very good. That number's on the screen. Tyler, thank you so much. You're very generous. John. And I apologize for blowing you off 2 times ago, but we finally got together.
We did.
We're not giving each other Omicron. How about that? I think I'm going to wear a mask. Tyler Jones, thank you, my friend.
John.
Talk to you soon. Bye now.
Take care.